Here are the exact steps to take to get to £10,000 per month from a rent-to-rent property business. And these are the exact same steps that my students had taken to get to that point as well. Here's my students Lauren and Leon's booking system. As you can see, they made just a little over £145,000 in revenue in the past 3 months alone. And I've also got a bunch of videos on my YouTube channel interviewing my students that have hit £10,000 per month and also interviewing students that have hit more than that. And for those that aren't familiar, I'm Yusuf Sheikh. In this channel right here, I teach you everything you need to know when it comes to kickstarting a profitable rent-to-rent business. Now we'll start off with the basic steps to allow you to secure your first property, and then we'll move on to the advanced strategies to allow you to scale and grow the business past £10,000 per month. Now this right here was the first rent-to-rent deal that I'd ever taken on. It was a 2-bedroom apartment in Slough going for £1,250 per month. Now I spent a total of £6,000 to get this deal up and running. This includes paying the first month's rent, deposit, furnishing costs, and also setup costs for the property itself. And on average, this deal right here was profiting me £1,000 per month in profit after all expenses. Now after this is when I focused on taking on more and more rent-to-rent deals, and I was mainly focusing in the London area, and after a while I was able to scale it to a nice portfolio. So let's start with the basics. First things first, you need to make sure that you get yourself fully set up to allow you to kickstart this business off right here. We need to make sure that you have your limited company set up. We need to make sure you're a part of the right compliances, you're part of the right schemes, amongst other things too. As a matter of fact, I've done you a solid. If you check the description box, I've left you a link where you can access a PDF guide that'll walk you through step by step everything that you need to get yourself set up with. You're welcome. So once you've fully got yourself set up, now you want to focus on targeting areas to take on rent-to-rent deals in. Now you can be quite open with this. Personally, I'd recommend for you to start off within an hour to an hour and a half distance from where you are. Don't get me wrong, you can start off way further than that, and other people have done that before and made it work. But the only reason why I'd recommend you starting within an hour to an hour and a half's distance is because it will allow you to be a lot more hands-on with it at the start. And when you're more hands-on with it, it will allow you to learn a lot faster. But if you're taking on a property that's 3-4 hours away, it's going to be a bit tricky for you going back and forth. Unless you have the right team on the ground, and unless you have the right systems and processes in place, which of course you're going to learn over time as you do this. Now, when it comes to researching the best areas, what I will say is that the vast majority of locations can work well for service accommodation. Ask yourself this question right here. Where do they have hotels? They pretty much have hotels across all towns and cities throughout the UK. And because we're in the same game as hotels, this should show you that because there are hotels everywhere, we can take on rent-to-rent properties and run them as Airbnbs pretty much everywhere as well. Now, of course, the level of demand in all these different areas is going to vary too. But there definitely are steps to follow to allow you to carry out thorough research on certain areas to allow you to determine whether or not those areas can work well for Airbnb and service accommodation. First things first, you can check out an analytics tool called AirDNA. You can type in the full address of that property you're trying to analyze, and it will give you a rough idea of how much you could charge per night and what the average occupancy rate is in that area for those types of properties. Now, what I will say is that you shouldn't take AirDNA at 100%. This is so important. You should only use AirDNA to give you a rough idea, as it's not 100% accurate, but it can still definitely give you an idea. Also, what you can do on top of that as well, you can jump on Airbnb and actually check out the local competition in the area. You can easily see how booked up the local competition are by just jumping on their calendars and seeing what's available and what's not available. Not only that as well, but you can actually check out the review section of each of these properties to see how many reviews there are. And if guests have left loads of reviews on those properties as well, and they're quite recent too, that could be a sign that they have loads of people always booking their properties. You can also check out the local hotels in that area too. If there's loads of hotels in that area, that's a very good sign that there's strong demand for Airbnbs and service accommodation in that area. Not only that as well, but believe it or not, you can actually use ChatGPT to assist you on your research when it comes to looking into that area and what's going on. So if I want to find out what brings people to that area, what attractions they've got, what companies that are based there, or maybe what construction work is taking place, I can actually ask ChatGPT this information and it will tell me the information that it knows. Now, ChatGPT may not be 100% right all of the times, but it can definitely give you an idea, and you can also back up what you've heard from ChatGPT by looking it up on Google as well. If you found on Google what ChatGPT is telling you, this is a very good sign. Quick example, the first ever rent-to-rent deal I'd taken on in Slough, when I did my research, I'd come to find out that there were a lot of corporate companies that were based there. There was a lot of construction work taking place. Mind you, Slough was only 20 minutes away from Heathrow Airport, which is the biggest airport in Europe, or one of the biggest airports. There was also major tourist attractions nearby as well, with Windsor Castle and also the Legoland theme park as well. And based on all of that, that painted a very good picture for Slough, for somewhere that had very good demand for service accommodation and Airbnb, and we made it work very well in that area. So once you've selected your areas, now it's time to go on a hunt for these landlords and also estate agents as well. Now, if you're just starting off, personally, I'd recommend you targeting landlords. From my experience, they tend to be a lot easier than dealing with estate agents. Now, the best platforms to target landlords directly on would be OpenRent, Gumtree, and also Spare Room as well, and occasionally Facebook Marketplace too. Now, if you're looking to target estate agents, the two main platforms for these are Rightmove and Zoopla, where you can find properties listed by estate agents. Now, it is worth mentioning as well that a lot of estate agents and landlords are going to be against this. It's definitely a numbers game, but eventually you will come across some that are definitely open to the idea. Now, let's say you come across a certain property where the landlord's open to it, the numbers stack up. This is when you sign a company let contract, you collect the keys, you pay the first month's rent, and you get to work with it. First things first, you need to make sure that you're getting the right team in place, and this is mainly your cleaning team and also your handyman guys as well. Now, it's so important that you make sure that you have a reliable cleaning team in place. That is literally the heartbeat of your business. Now, you can easily find a lot of these cleaning companies by going on Google and just typing in local cleaning companies. A lot of them will come up. You can easily jump on Gumtree and do the same thing. What you could also do as well is jump on Facebook and join Facebook groups that are mainly centered around service accommodations, and then you can put a post out asking for a recommended cleaning company in that area that's reliable, that other people have worked with too, and you'll have people reaching out to you giving you recommendations. And you can also do the exact same thing when it comes to getting a maintenance team in place as well. We're talking plumbers, electricians, and also just general handymen as well that need to pop by there to attend to the general stuff. Now, let's say that rent-to-rent deal that you've taken on is making you around £1,000 per month in profit, which to be fair is pretty average. Now, that means simply you'd need 10 of those places to get to £10,000 per month in profit. Now, the real question is, how do we go about actually doing that? Now we're going to get into the juicy part and talk about the strategies involved with this right here. Now, what I will say, once you've taken on your first rent-to-rent deal, the process of getting another rent-to-rent deal is pretty much rinse and repeat. You pretty much just follow the same process over and over again. Now, when it comes to managing these service accommodation properties as well, if you're by yourself, it's very doable up to the point where you start taking on, let's say, 6 or 7. Now, once you get to the point where you have 6 or 7 service accommodation properties, if you don't have the right things in place, systems, processes, and team as well, you will get to the point where you're spending all your time on that business. And trust me, that will not be fun at all. But that's something I'm going to be taking you through later on in the video when it comes to systems and processes to have in place to allow you to manage things efficiently and effectively. But right now, let's talk about the obvious thing, money. If you're trying to start this business and get it to 10K per month in profit, if the first deal, let's say you spent £6,000 on, how can you get to the point where you've taken on 10 of those deals? In fact, there's actually 3 main ways of going about doing this. The first way, let's say you invest £6,000 into a deal, the deal's making you £1,000 per month in profit. Well, the obvious thing to do in this scenario would be wait 6 months until you get your money back, and then once you got your money back after 6 months, then you can reinvest that money into another rent-to-rent deal. And now you've got 2 deals making you £2,000 per month in profit. And guess what? To raise £6,000, you're only going to have to wait 3 months to take that back out of your business to invest into another rent-to-rent deal. And guess what? From that process, the cycle can just go on, and you can actually scale it to a pretty big level by doing that alone. However, there is another way for you to go about doing it a lot quicker as well. And this involves you actually attracting big Airbnb bookings coming directly to you. What I mean by that is, let's say you have people that want to book your place and they're looking to book for a long-term period, let's say for 3 or 4 months, which trust me, if you have a property in the right place, there's plenty of people wanting to book for that long. As a matter of fact, let's use one of my clients, Andrew, as an example, who was able to secure a 7-month booking where they paid £30,000 up front to book his property. You may be thinking, what the But yeah, someone actually paid him £30,000 to book his 2-bedroom apartment for 7 months. Anyways, that person came directly to Andrew. What that means is they didn't go on Airbnb, they didn't go on booking.com, they came directly to Andrew. And the beauty about having people coming to you and booking with you directly, as opposed to going on Airbnb and booking.com, is that when they pay you, you have the money in your account straight away. Whereas if they go through Airbnb or booking.com, they actually hold on to the funds at times for quite some time. So now when Andrew was paid that £30,000, what do you think he did? Well, of course, he took a portion of that and started investing it into more and more rent-to-rent deals. And I've actually got quite a lot of students that have followed that exact same process when it comes to attracting more long-term bookings, getting paid a fat chunk of cash, and then using a portion of that cash to reinvest and get more rent-to-rent deals. And the question is, how can you actually go about finding these big boy bookings right here? Well, I'll tell you what, Andrew actually got that £30,000 booking by listing his property on OpenRent. Yes, you heard it right, OpenRent, as well as looking for properties to rent for ourselves, we can also list our properties on Open Rent to attract more long-term bookings. Not only that as well, you have corporate accommodation platforms such as Situ, Seiko, and also Silverdor as well, amongst quite a few others, where they solely focus on, having people book properties that are traveling for work trips and business. So if you're listing with them as well, these individuals tend to book a lot more long-term as well. You can also list your property on Spare Room, HomeLike, Google Listings, amongst other platforms out there as well, to attract more long-term bookings and also direct bookings as well. Here's a little hack for you as well. Let's say you have someone coming through Airbnb and they want to book your property for 4 months. You can reach out to them and let them know that, hey, we've actually got a special offer right now to where if you choose to book with us directly and not through Airbnb, we can offer you a 10% discount on your booking. What do you think about that? And in most cases, they're definitely going to say yes, because they're going to be spending a lot of money on that booking. So a 10% saving will definitely go a long way. Another little tip to attract more long-term bookings is by adjusting your minimum nightly stay on Airbnb and booking.com. So instead of allowing people to book your property for 1 or 2 nights, you're actually allowing people to book for a minimum of, let's say, 4 nights, 5 nights. Some people do a week, some people even do 2 weeks, which, don't get me wrong, will definitely mean that less people will be booking their properties, but it will also mean that they will only be attracting people that will be looking to book long term as well. Now, the other way that you can get your rent-to-rent business to £10,000 per month without restricting yourself to the funds that you have is by focusing on a strategy called deal sourcing. Let's say, for example, now you've invested quite a bit of your money into rent-to-rent deals already and you have it tied up in them. Well, in the meantime, you can definitely still look for rent-to-rent deals, and the ones that you come across, instead of you taking it on for yourself, you can actually sell it to an investor for a fee. Currently, we have a deal sourcing company right now, and we're charging £4,000 per deal that we sell to investors, and investors happily pay that. Now, of course, it has to be a good deal. Of course, it has to be in a good location. The numbers need to make sense. But if you're finding those types of deals, which are pretty much everywhere, people will happily pay you a nice fee for that. Now, guess what? If you're selling 2 of those deals, you're making £8,000. That's more than enough for you to get yourself a nice little rent-to-rent deal. I know people that are selling many deals per week, so this is a strategy that you can definitely implement to allow you to scale and grow your rent-to-rent business a lot faster. By the way, if you are someone that's very interested in kickstarting this business off and you're looking for more help and support, you can click the link in the description box to schedule in a call with us to see how we can best help you. Now, another very important thing that you want to keep in mind to allow you to get to that 10K per month goal a lot quicker is making sure you're taking on the right types of deals. Remember that first deal I told you I took on where it was making me £1,000 per month in profit? Well, recently we actually took on a much bigger deal, and this deal right here is going to be generating a total of £3,000 per month in profit. Now, this is actually a 4-bedroom house located in southwest London, not too far away from Zone 1 Central London. And the reason why that property makes so much is because on average we're going to be charging anywhere between £400 to £600 per night. Now, think about it. If you're taking on those types of deals and one of those deals is making you £3,000 per month in profit, 3 of those deals will get you to the point where you're generating £9,000 per month in profit. Whereas the first deal I told you I took on, where you're making £1,000 per month in profit, you need 9 of those deals. The point I'm trying to make is that when you go for larger properties, you can typically make a lot more money from these properties as well. Because first and foremost, you can sleep a lot more people in larger properties compared to 1 or 2 bedroom flats, which means you'd be able to charge a much higher nightly rate, which ultimately means you'll be making more profit on that property. Not only that as well, there's actually a much higher risk when it comes to taking on flats compared to taking on houses as well. And the reason for this is because a good portion of blocks of flats out there actually have leases that don't allow shortlets or people to run properties in those blocks as serviced accommodation. I can't tell you the amount of stories that I've heard where people have taken on flats in certain blocks and they were doing service accommodation for a little bit, but they end up getting shut down when the building managers noticed what they were doing. Now, it's not like that for all blocks of flats, but for a lot of them, it is like that as well. So you definitely want to make sure that you're double checking that the lease on those buildings actually allow them. But for houses, you don't have that risk at all because houses aren't leasehold properties, they are freehold properties. And what that simply means is that freehold properties, the land that the property sits on, the landlord owns that. Whereas the land that a block of flats sits on is not owned by the landlord that owns a 2-bedroom apartment in that block. It's owned by the freeholder that owns that entire block. So that's just a little side note right there. But not only that too, believe it or not, there's there's actually way less people looking for houses compared to flats, especially newbies. You have a lot of newbies trying to kickstart their business off with rent-to-rent and service accommodation, and the vast majority of them are looking for the same types of properties. And typically these are 1 to 2 bedroom flats in high-rise buildings in town centers and city centers, and also places not too far away. So typically you tend to have a lot more competition for flats when it comes to doing rent-to-rents. However, when it comes to houses, you have less competition because a lot of the newbies, or most of the newbies, aren't flocking to the houses. This is where you can take advantage of that. This is where you can capitalize off that. And I've actually noticed that typically landlords that own houses are actually typically more open to doing rent-to-rents than landlords that own flats. And I genuinely think that it's because a lot of these landlords that own flats are always being bombarded by people wanting to do rent-to-rents, whereas landlords that own houses, not so much. So those are the 3 main reasons why you want to focus on going for larger properties instead of smaller flats. You make more profits from them, you don't have an issue with the lease, and also there's less competition for them as well. Now, when it comes to scaling a rent-to-rent business to £10,000 per month in profit, let's not forget about the systems and processes required to allow us to do this smoothly. And in order for us to do this, we need to be able to identify what are the biggest time drains in the business and how can we delegate that or systemize and automate that. Now, I would definitely say one massive time drain is actually searching for the deals themselves, sending out constant inquiries to landlords and estate agents online on these property platforms. Now, once you get to a certain level in your business, you can actually hire what's called a virtual assistant and pay them to do that on your behalf as well. And virtual assistants are people that you can hire from third world countries in Africa and also Asia as well, amongst other places too. And you can pay them, let's say for example, $4 an hour, $5 an hour, and they could be working for you for a couple of hours a day, solely sending out inquiries for you. I've had many virtual assistants that have done this for myself in the past, and trust me, it pays off so well. And it gives you so much of your time back as well, because like I said, that part right there is a massive time drain. Not only that as well, but you also have the property set up as well. So when you actually take on a rent-to-rent property, you actually have to set up to get a look into a very high standard. Now, when you're starting off, I definitely recommend you doing this yourself, 100%, but it's very, very time consuming. And honestly, once you get to a certain level, you want to be delegating that to other people to set that up on your behalf. Also, other time draining tasks involved with managing service accommodation properties as well is all of the admin tasks involved. We're talking about sending out contracts and terms and conditions, collecting guest deposits, also guest communication as well, amongst other things too. Now, there's 2 things that you should have in place to allow you to streamline that whole process. First, you want to make sure that you have a channel manager in place, and this essentially acts as a central hub for all of the bookings that you receive from different channels. Not only that as well, it acts as a central hub for all of the guest communication, and you can also send out terms and conditions to guests and collect deposits from your one channel manager. Now, there's many different ones out there. One that I personally recommend that I've used is one called Uplisting. So make sure you have a channel manager in place, and also make sure you have a virtual assistant assisting you on the guest communication, which can be a massive time drain. And not only that as well, with the admin tasks involved with what I just mentioned. Also, you have the guest check-in and check-out process as well. This is quite straightforward and easy to automate. You can have a key safe outside of the property to allow guests to collect keys and also drop off the keys when they check out as well. Alternatively, you can use a platform called Keyness. Now, essentially, Keyness acts as a drop-off and collection points for your keys. And usually these are in local supermarkets and local shops around the area where guests go there, give them a code, collect the keys, and then go back there to drop off the keys once they've checked out the property. You also want to make sure that you have a dynamic pricing software in place. This is so important. This is absolutely crucial. Now, what this is a software that allows you to price your properties on a night-by-night basis automatically, which will save you a whole lot of time and also has the potential to make you a whole lot of money as well. The main one that most people use is called Price Labs, and that's the one that I'd recommend. Now, another thing that you want to keep in mind when it comes to growing your business to £10,000 per month and beyond is your team. And the location of your properties will play a major role in how efficiently and effectively you manage your team. Let me put it in a different way. Let's say you have 2 people. Both of these people have 10 rent-to-rent properties and both make £10,000 per month. However, the first person has 10 rent-to-rent properties in 10 different cities across the UK. And the second person has 10 rent-to-rent properties all in the same location. Now, who do you think is going to have the easiest time possible managing those properties? And not only that as well, managing the teams. It's obviously going to be the second person, because guess what? When you have properties in the same area, typically you only have one team to manage. You have one cleaning team to manage, and you also have a set of handymen that you're managing in that local area. However, if you've got 10 different deals across 10 different cities, that's 10 different cleaning teams that you're having to deal with amongst 10 different handymen as well. That can work, yes. yes, I'm not saying that can't work, but that will come with so much more headache and so much more stress that personally, I wouldn't go for it. Now, don't get me wrong, can you make that work? Yes, you 100% can. But it will be a much bigger headache. It will be so much more time consuming, and it will just be a bigger headache overall managing all those different people. And not only that as well, when it comes to dealing with cleaning companies, if you've got just one property, they're not going to prioritize you the same way as someone else that has 30 properties in the same area. So that's very important to also keep in mind too. So what you want to be doing is you want to be focusing on building a stronghold in a certain area, whether it's a town or a city. And then once you've done that, now you can focus on expanding on other areas and doing the same thing in those areas as well. Now, let's look at some of the risks involved when it comes to growing a rent-to-rent business to £10,000 per month and beyond. First risk you're going to have is potentially the landlord taking the property back from you. Now, this right here isn't a major common thing, but I've heard this happening to people in the past. So what you need to make sure that you're doing correctly from the start is you need to make sure that you have airtight contracts in place with the landlord to prevent them from being able to take the property back from you. And of course, when I say that, I obviously mean take the property back from you within the time space that you've agreed to take on that property. So one way you can protect yourself is by not including a break clause for the landlord in the contract. This is what a lot of people do, and it's a major mistake. And what this basically is let's say, for example, I add in a 6-month break clause. So what that means is when the 6-month approaches in the contract, the landlord can activate that break clause, and as a result, he can choose to terminate the contract and take his property back. So you've got two options in this scenario to protect yourself. Number one, don't include a break clause at all. Or number two, if you insist on including a break clause just to protect yourself, then you want to include a break clause for yourself only and not the landlord. The second risk involved is neighbors. Again, this isn't super common. However, I have heard from people in the past to where they've had major issues with their neighbors, and as a result, the neighbors have made their life living hell. Some of them even getting to the point where they're reporting them to the police and also the local council as well. So what you need to make sure that you're doing from the absolute start is checking in with all of your neighbors. When you first take on a property, simply go introduce yourself to the neighbors. Say hi to them, introduce yourself, let them know what you're looking to do, and let them know that they can contact you at any time if there's any issues whatsoever. And just be extremely friendly with them. This is super important. Don't get me wrong, is it going to work all the time? No, it's not, because some people are antisocial and they don't want to know. That's fine, but it definitely can work a lot of the times, and it will pay you wonders to have those neighbors on your side. Another major risk involved with this business right here is guests. People staying in your property, specifically the wrong types of people staying in your property. People coming to your property, trashing it, throwing parties, playing loud music, and ultimately pissing off the neighbors as well. So what you want to make sure that you're doing to minimize the risk of that actually happening is making sure that you have an airtight vetting process for when you're taking on guests to stay in your property. For example, a lot of people don't allow people under the age of 18 or 21 to book their properties. Also, a lot of people don't actually have the minimum nightly stay for 1 or 2 nights, because they know that that increases the likelihood of people booking their properties and actually throwing parties throughout that time. Not only that as well, they're actually checking in with the guests to see what the purpose of their visit is. And usually, if it's someone that lives local in the area and they're looking to book a service accommodation property in the area, usually that's a red flag. Not always, but usually. So just keep that in mind. On top of this as well, you also want to make sure that you're installing a Ring doorbell outside of your property so that you can actually see who's coming in your property and also how many people are coming in your property as well. One more thing, you want to make sure that you're getting guests to sign terms and conditions that they will adhere to the house rules that you set in the property. If they throw parties, they'll get fined £1,000. If they end up smoking in the property, they'll also get fined £500 as well. And I'm not just randomly coming up with numbers. This is actually the amount that we charge guests that throw parties and also smoke in the property as well. By the way, if you're interested in learning the exact approach and the exact script that me and my students use to take on rent-to-rent deals on a regular basis, check out this video right here. It will walk you through the exact script to use and also overcome all the common objections that landlords will throw your way to ultimately get them over the line to give you that deal. Again, check out this video right here.